All right, welcome back, folks. This is Professor Diffley. We are in Philosophy 201. This is Module 7. This is Lecture Video 3. So we had just completed in Lecture Video 2 discussion on utilitarianism and simulated killings, and now we're going to look at Kantian and virtue ethics. So Kantian ethics and virtue ethics. Why are we going to talk about them together here? Because for here, they're going to really cover, more or less come together on the same thing. What they have to say about playing the killer in video games is going to be very, very similar here. Why? So would the Aristotelian, the virtue ethicist or the Kantian ethicist think it is wrong to play the killer in video games? The answer is, for both of them, they're going to answer this. They're going to ask this question. Not directly. It really depends on the link between doing so and its effect on us as moral agents, right? So what is the impact going to be in the real world there? So go back to this. This is not going to be that different than the discussions we had and the way it was looked at for killing animals, right? For Kant, we could eat animals and we don't have a direct duty towards them. But he cautions us against being cruel to animals, right? Because he argues that the person who is cruel to animals becomes desensitized and can then become cruel to humans, right there. That's what they're worried about, is that those actions can have impact on how we then interact with people and what we do to them. And Aristotle and virtue ethics would ask very much the same thing. Yeah, you might be doing that, but what is it? Is it going to lead you to be more courageous in real life, less courageous? All the major virtues there. Is that going to have an impact on all of that? So that is really where they're getting at this. And again, so these are the questions they ask. Now it's up to you to really dive into that and flesh that out. So now let's just jump over to simulated killing and films and plays here, because we have talked about video games mostly, and that's where most of the focus is going to be. You could write more about films and plays in the paper. I do ask you specifically about video games, so you can work in both there. Play acting as the killer in simulated killing. So in many ways, we could treat this as the same, playing the killer in films and plays, as we do in video games, right? We could really say that it's the same. There's no difference. So it's really what then the questions, the empirical questions. So empiricals, things we can observe, data, that sort of evidence, information like that. That's what we're getting at here. But the questions we're going to ask are going to be a little different from the video games. This is a question we're trying to figure out. Does physically holding a fake knife or gun in a play or a movie or something that make us more or less likely to hold a real knife or gun in real life? Or is there really a difference where, you have to actually, like in a video game, again, you're just pushing a button, pulling the trigger on a control or something like that. But what if you actually have to, aim a gun at somebody and, fire a fake gun at them, or come up, and even though it's a fake knife, and you have to actually perform the act of stabbing them and something like that? Is there a difference between those? Now go back to, the trolley problem and things like that. Usually when I ask that question, not just in this class, but in every ethics class I ever taught, most people see a difference between pulling the lever and killing the people, and killing the one person. They're okay with that. But when it comes to having to push somebody in front of the train to stop it, they see that as a bridge too far. They can't do that. And it's usually because of the physical act of it, right? Because of actual touching the other human being, and that where the almost the pulling of the lever, separates it from it. They've argued this too with maybe some of the problems with or ethical questions about drone warfare, is where you actually do have, operators of these drones, a world away. They're looking at a video game, so a screen similar to a video game. Some of the controllers, mimic and mirror, popular video game controllers for lots of reasons. One, I mean, some of the cynical ones is because that's what video games are getting us to do, right? Is to turn us into killers and soldiers down the line. And again, I'm not saying soldiers are killers. I'm saying it depends on your view there, where they're saying it's trying to turn you into this, right? It's definitely a negative view of those things. But another reason why those controllers might be the way they are is because Sony, Microsoft, all of them put a lot of time and effort into the ergonomics and of these controllers and how they work. But that's besides the point. But so that's one of the questions with those. Does it make it easier to kill that way? Is there a problem where you're not actually seeing the person? It's so far away. It's simply pushing a button. It's almost detached, right? It's not like they say it's not like the same as you would be like if you're actually in a battle somewhere, you're hand-to-hand combat or something like that, where you could see the person, you could see the effect of it. Where this, you push a button, it's a world away, you can turn off the screen, you're never going to see what actually happened on the ground, right? So is there a difference there? What about, actors get into it, right? You're not just acting out that killing scene or that, but they usually have to do and act like the bad guy for a long time, however long time it got made. Does that have an impact on the people, right? Is that different than merely controlling a character, right? Because we turn off the video game and it's over, right? We don't have to actually physically act out everything. We don't have to play the part of the bad guy truly, where we're looking like it in a movie or a play, stuff like that. What about watching simulated killing? This is going to be similar, about topics. We really need to figure out, does this have an impact on us? If so, in what ways does watching it have an impact? Positive, negative, neutral, that sort of question. So just to the end here, summary and conclusion. This is the paradox. It's called the paradox of tragedy. It's also the paradox of negative emotions. We discussed it in the textbook. So it's sort of the idea of like we avoid. No one would want to go. You go into example in text, like you're checking into a hotel room and you open it and there's it's a crime scene, right? Essentially, there's blood prints, blood splatter on the wall, pools of blood on the floor, things like that. It's going to make you scared. There's all sorts of emotions. You're probably going to run away, right? You don't want to be in there. Especially paying for a room like that, but you don't want to be in there. Yet, most of us, like many people, will, pay money to be scared, pay money to, watch horror movies or violence and things like that, that they'll get some form of pleasure out of. Well, what does that say about us, right? Because isn't, the movies, a good horror movie, it's going to really, it's going to have an emotional impact in some ways. What does it say about us that, we like that, but we don't like the other one? Is there a difference? Are they the same? Are they different types of emotions? These are a question we have. So, but it is a paradox, or at least it's a very something that we need to unpack and detangle in many ways. Right? Is what is the difference between those two? Again, we might abhor violence in real life, but we'll watch it, right? When I was younger, you watch boxing, MMA, and that, but doesn't mean I'm going out there trying to, get into fights all the time or any time. You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? What does that say about us? And does that impact us in real world? As you have now that I have kids, I got 3-year-old twin boys. You start wondering about this. Like I grew up playing with the fake guns and things like that, and went to the question is, do we allow? What age do you allow it? Do you things like that? It's interesting, and even these questions where like I've grown up playing video games and things like that, and where my wife hasn't, and trying to see, she had the view of them as being just child's play and silly, but then starting to get to understand them and more, and then seeing the value of them. But it's interesting, right? Is that these are then questions we gotta ask, and so it does have a real world impact in many ways. So think about it that way too, right? It's what are we gonna teach the next generation, and what are we gonna use from that, and how because we need to know how it's gonna shape them. So that's why this is important. All right, that is the summary here then. For utilitarianism, you can read through this. It's not whether it is simulated. That's not what's important. It's how much happiness do these activities generate. there. And for Con and virtue ethics, it's it's how does it being involved in this or participating or viewing it, how does that change us as people? That's really the questions. But this really comes down to psychology, right? How does it impact us in our minds, the way we view the world, and we act, right? That's what we're talking about here. So it's a much. I'm hoping you see it's a much more complicated thing. Whether than yes, video games are good. Yes, video games are bad. Right? There's more to it than that. But yeah, if you got any questions, let me know. Take a look through this. Read the text, the videos, the articles, any of that. You got any questions, anything you want to discuss this further? Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about this more, help you any way I can. All right, thank you, folks, and again, good luck with the module. I look forward to reading your position papers on this. All right, thank you.